All men are created equal, a term popularized by the U.S. Declaration of Independence that everyone that has lived or lived in the United States has heard at least once in their life. But what if I told you equality shouldn't be the way we provide fairness in our society? Instead, it should be equity. Thus, in my speech today, I'll be persuading you about the importance of prioritizing equity over equality in our society. And this is a relevant topic to you guys as the audience because so many things in our society deals with equality, equity, and fairness. For example, we're in a public institution, so we could be talking about educational equality, and other examples could be income inequality and things of that such. And I'm credible to speak on this topic because one, I wrote my AP research paper on equality and equity in high school, and secondly, I've been researching this topic over the past few weeks, so this is a topic I am particularly passionate about. So in my speech today, I have three main points. One, equity in education. Two, equity in a more broader sense in solving social issues. And three, how we can use equity and equality concurrently in our society. So before I begin my first main point, I'd like to define equity and equality in the context of my speech. According to the National Association of Career and Employment, the term equity refers to fairness and justice and is distinguished from equality because whereas equality means providing the same to all, equity means recognizing that we do not all start from the same place and must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances. So I chose to focus on education regarding equity because often education does mimic and mirror society, but also the founder of public education in the United States, Horace Mann, states education is, quote, the great equalizer. So I'll be analyzing if that is so in our current educational climate. So equity and equality can be illustrated through many educational policies, but I'll be focusing on two in particular: the No Child Left Behind Act, which promoted equality, and the Every Student Succeed Act, which promoted equity. So first starting with the No Child Left Behind Act. The No Child Left Behind Act passed in 2001's goal was to improve student achievement through standardized testing. That was the same for everyone, so the same scores for everyone. And of course, this brought many problems because if students did not meet a particular threshold for standardized test scores, schools could lose federal funding and could even be shut down. And this negatively impacted low-scoring students who are also mostly low-income students as well. Because according to Dr. Julian Hellig in 2018, professor of educational leadership and policy studies at the University of Kentucky, states some schools' intent was, quote, gaming the system by allowing these low-income students, who are mostly the low-scoring students, into special education and also dropping out entirely in order to not affect the school's average standardized test scores. So in terms of equality in education with the No Child Left Behind Act, it is proportionally affected a large group of people. However, the successor of the No Child Left Behind Act, the Every Student Succeed Act, which was passed in 2015, has equity requirements that every school has to abide by. And according to Dr. Yi-Tung Chu in 2019, professor at the University of Louisiana Monroe, states the Every Student Succeed Act provided improvements in acknowledging injustices the No Child Left Behind Act failed to address, like, for example, socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So equity actually addresses those issues that people may not be able to control, thus achieving true equality. So before I move on to my second point, which is equity in solving social issues, I'd like to illustrate how equality does not fix many of these social issues. Because according to Dr. Madhyari Gopalan in 2019, public policy professor at Pennsylvania State University, states there's been numerous examples that have shown that equality doesn't effectively fix many social issues long term. Additionally, according to Dr. William Ankema in 2020, professor at Brock University, states the primary reason equality does not fix many of these social issues is because it does not account for differences people may not control. And some of these differences could be race, gender identity, and sexual orientation, just to name a few that people cannot control at all. However, equity, on the other hand, solves many of these social issues by not using a one-size-fits-all approach. So, to illustrate how equity is used to solve social issues in our society, the best example I could think of comes from the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. So there's been a 6-year dispute with the U.S. Soccer Federation and the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team wanting to be on equal footing as their male counterparts, justifying this because of their on-field success winning the previous 2 World Cups. However, a lawsuit settlement in February put an end to the prolonged fight by delivering $24 million in back pay for the women and an agreement that the men's and women's teams be paid the same from now on. Additionally, a New York Times article on February of 2022 states the reason they are finally being paid the same from now on is because it is, quote, fair and just. And which two words did I use to define equity in my earlier in my speech? Fairness and justice. So this is a great example of how equity can fix many social issues that have been happening for a long time. So before I start with my last main point, which is how we can use equity and equality concurrently in our society, I would like to refer back to my thesis statement by explicitly stating that I did not say we should just abolish the whole concept of equality generally, but we should prioritize it, or we should prioritize equity over equality, thus equity being primary and equality being secondary. So in my speech today, I have two main examples to illustrate how equity and equality can be used concurrently in our society. So this comes from education and also the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team, which were my two previous main points. So a study by the George Lucas Educational Foundation in 2018 found that educators believe equity and equality should be used concurrently in schools. For example, equity in helping students that may need more than others, and equality in grading policies, for example, that should be the same for everyone. Additionally, the second example comes from the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. They're not being paid equally as the men, but have more equitable opportunity that they've been denied for far too long. So this is a great example of how equity and equality can also be used concurrently in our society, but equity being primary and equality being secondary. So to conclude my speech today, I had three main points to support my arguments of the importance of achieving, or rather promoting equity over equality. And I had three main points to support that. One, equity in education. Two, equity in solving social issues. And three, how we can use equity and equality concurrently in our society. So with more and more problems regarding fairness happening on a daily basis on a micro and macro level, more likely than not, equality isn't the way to solve these problems. Instead, it should be equity. Thus, in order to truly uphold the quote, all men are created equal, that many hold so dearly in their hearts, more likely than not, in order to actually uphold this, the mechanism we need to use to achieve true equality in our society should be equity. Thank you.